Yes, I can see in different directions. So don't mess with me today. Today I have new glasses. These are my new replaced aspect glasses because last time, remember, my glasses caught on fire. So these are new ones. Fireproof, baby. This hot Mars will not be able to burn these glasses. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be doing our video on aspects of Mars. And Mars actually is quite a special planet because it has special aspects. We no longer are in the inner planets that only have like just one aspect directly opposite to them. No, Mars has different aspects, and that's what we're going to discuss. And as always, if you do not know where your Mars is placed in your horoscope, so you can see how this Mars will affect your chart and all the other planetary placements, for that check out the links here and check out my full astrological report, including my books Astrology, Conjunction, and Aspects at the Speed of Light, where you will get all the detailed information on how to study aspects with all the planets through houses and how their aspect is beforehand. So you will know all the details already through those things. So Mars's aspect. What does it mean? So Mars, what is Mars first of all? Mars is our energy in this life. Mars is what gets us going to fight and hunt for the food. That's what Mars is. Mars represents land. Mars represents the conquered land. Because Mars is a soldier, a fighter. He's an athlete. And what does a soldier do? He has to go and conquer the land and say, yes, we won. And Mars represents your male brothers, your male friends. Mars represents fire. Mars represents blood, sharp objects, knives. A lot of things. Mars can represent a lot of things, you know. Just it's a truckload of things Mars represents. Then what happens when Mars sits in a certain house? Well, Mars has special aspects in Vedic astrology. Mars, first of all, always directly aspects the other planet that are just like the other planets. He'll aspect directly the 7th place from itself. So directly opposite, Mars is looking. That's one aspect. The other aspect is it aspects the 4th place from itself, no matter where it sits. It'll always aspect the 4th place. If it's in the 1st house, it'll aspect the 4th house. If it's in the 3rd house, it'll aspect the 6th house. If it's in the 6th house, it'll aspect the 9th house. So while it's looking straight forward, it's also looking at the 4th place from itself. But then the 3rd aspect of Mars is 8th place from itself. So if Mars is in the 1st house, it'll aspect the 8th house. If Mars is in the 2nd house, it'll aspect the 9th house. If Mars is in the 3rd house, it'll aspect the 10th house. And these are the 3 aspects of Mars that you need to know. But before we get into what this aspect is doing, you got to understand when Mars looks at and aspects a house, he gives his direct, straightforward action towards that house. Because he's a very serious soldier. Mars is not a comedian like Mercury. Mars doesn't care about marketing. Mars simply wants to divide and conquer. That's what Mars wants to do. He wants to take action. He wants to go straight forward, and he wants to achieve those things. So no matter where Mars is looking, he wants to go directly to those things and conquer them. That's it. That's his goal. Mars wants to overpower them, overpower those houses. Now, usually when is a time when, you know, there are a lot of people in this world, I run into them all day, where they say, I am demotivated, I am lethargic, I am, I'm not aggressive, I'm not, here to conquer things. Why is it that Mars is doing it? Well, that all depends on the Mars' position in the horoscope. First of all, the sign that Mars is placed in, it's going to determine how Mars is going to act. Mars in air is aggressiveness. Mars in Leo is aggressiveness. Mars in Sagittarius is aggressiveness. Mars in Cancer is aggressiveness. Mars in Capricorn is aggressiveness. But the signs where Mars becomes a person where they're not more about the conflict. They're about simply solving that conflict. They don't want to go and conquer something. They simply want to go and solve a certain dispute. That's where Mars usually does this in signs related to Taurus and Venus. The Venus sign is where Mars, you will usually find, is becoming in a way, not a kind of a peacemaker, but simply Mars just wants to solve an issue. He doesn't want to conquer things. Signs like Pisces is where Mars wants to conquer things, and especially Kapha signs. In Vedic astrology, there's something called Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Kapha signs usually bring Mars into this calm realm. But in the sign of Cancer, which is a Kapha sign, it's not calm because Mars is here agitated. It's a sign of debilitation where Mars falls to its wrong path. But no matter what, most of the time, Mars simply wants to go straight forward. That's it. I'm going to go and take this thing. And this is what my lifelong goal is now. So now, let's say if Mars is in the first house, Mars is looking at the 4th house, 7th house, 8th house. So first of all, why does Mars have these special aspects? The reason why Mars is given the 4th aspect by our sages, because what is the 4th house? The 4th aspect represents the 4th house of the horoscope. It's home, land, people of the homeland. What is a soldier? He fights for the people of the homeland. Mars represents real estate. What's his 4th house? Home and land. So Mars gets that 4th aspect. 7th, every aspect has a 7th drishti or aspect. But then Mars has the 8th aspect. Why? Because 8th house is a house which is like a black hole. Just imagine if your whole house is lit up, but there's just one dark room that no light ever works. And what happens is you are afraid to go into that room. Because you're like, why is it that a light never works there? You start imagining things. Is there a ghost in here? Is there a demonic thing in here? So what Mars does, Mars like, oh, no. I want to go in there. I want to face my fears. And I want to deal with the emergencies of this world. What does a soldier do? Soldier is the one who sees all the gory things in life. He's the one who goes into the battlefield and looks at fear straight forward with the person who has the gun and the sword and the knife in their hand. Mars is not afraid. So Mars is always curious about the 8th house. 8th house is that unknown house that we're always afraid of. So this is why Mars is giving the 8th aspect in astrology. That you are the one who's going to go and face the fears versus Moon and Jupiter or Venus. You're the one who has that 8th strength. So when Mars is in the first house, first of all, this person is becoming very action oriented. Physically, they are very active in their life. They always want to be competitive and always want to be the first in everything that they do. Because it's the ascendant. They're sitting on the ascendant. It's like you're putting something on the ascendant and suddenly it filters everything on every other house. Every aspect of your house is going to have this Mars energy. You're going to try to conquer your fathers, your teachers, your higher learning. You're going to try to conquer your home, your family, everything. But when Mars is in the first house, he looks at the 4th house. Here, and also the reason why Mars is given the 4th aspect is because Mars is a protector. He protects. Soldier protects the people of the homeland. What is 4th house? Mother, emotion, protection. My dwelling is my protection. From weather, from animals, from criminals, it is my protection. So Mars looks at the 4th house. This person becomes very protective of their home and their mother and their dwelling. They're always wanting to fight for them. If somebody comes after them, this Mars will be there with a gun and a knife if you go after them. Mars in the first house also makes a person very engaged in weapons. Like these are the people who like to collect weapons. Especially Mars in the first and third house, you'll notice these are the people who love to, play with guns and play with swords and all sorts of things. Then Mars looks at the 7th house from the first house, which is the house of spouse, marriage, unionship, partnerships, other people. This person will always try to dominate everybody who comes in their life. They somehow want to be that general in everybody's life. If their spouse, if their girlfriend, they're always going to try to control what they're doing. They're always going to try to control how the other person needs to behave. It's like they want to put the other person into a boot camp. I'm the sergeant. You're going to have to listen to me, give me push-ups, wake up at 4, do this, do this. So it becomes a very power controlling aspect of Mars, regardless of where Mars sits. Then Mars looks at the 8th house from the first house. This is the person who's not afraid to go and face their enemies and face emergencies in life. If you challenge them, they'll go after you. 8th house is a house of death. And they're not afraid of death. They're like, I want to know what death is. Really, this is what pain is like, and then I'm going to die? Let me experience that. So you'll see a lot of athletes, a lot of fighters, a lot of boxers, having this energy within them in the first house. They're willing to shed blood for it. 8th house represents surgeries, where blood is being cut and coming out. Mars looks at that and say, I'm going to use a weapon to cut you open. If you try to challenge me, if you try to come after my dwelling. So that's why the 8th aspect, that's how the 8th aspect of Mars works. Mars is in the 3rd house. Okay? Regardless of the sign placement, it can show that a person will have a younger brother. This can also show they will be very competitive with their younger brother. And there could be power struggles with their younger brother. But then Mars looks at the 9th house. Mars wants to not deal with what the teacher or professor or the father is teaching. They're like, no, I'm going to go there and I'm going to try to conquer your position. I want to be the teacher. I want to be the guru. I don't think you can teach me what you're trying to teach me. So he's trying to overtake that 9th house. This is the Mars that will not believe in religion or spirituality unless this Mars is exalted. Then the person is extremely disciplined. Mars will be like, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. and I'm going to practice and do my meditation because I want to be better than my father and my teacher. That's a Mars you will also find. Then Mars looks at the 10th house from the 3rd house. So what is this 8th aspect doing on the 10th house? Well, what this person is going to want to do, he's not afraid of society. He's not afraid of their co-workers and bosses. They're going to want to go and conquer their bosses, their co-workers, and society at large. They're going to, if they have to shed blood in society or in their work environment, they will do that. So what this person will do, they do not care if they're hurting your emotions. They do not care if they're hurting their bosses, the company. Their goal is to be that best salesman out there. That's what this Mars does. And this is why Mars in the 3rd house makes a very competitive, investigative journalist. For his work, he's willing to go into the middle of the bloodshed, middle of the war, take a picture, take the news, sit with bin Laden, sit with the leaders of ISIS, and do not care if they're going to behead him. Because he's taken on that challenge of the 8th aspect. And this is how from each house you can see, especially in my book Aspects is the Speed of Light, you'll understand Mars through each house, how he is behaving. And then you look at your horoscope, anybody else's horoscope, you will see. But just remember, the sign placement will either calm Mars down, make Mars disciplined, or just agitate Mars. Mars will be like just a gorilla wanting to attack you. Okay? So guys, this is my analysis of Mars aspect. If you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And again, if you want to know where your Mars is placed and all my other planetary placements, my books, my magazines, consultations, for that, check out the links here. Otherwise, We'll see you this Friday with the Sun in the third house in Gemini. Okay? Bye-bye.